Hey, hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is The Other Thing I Do. My guest this week is Bronagh Gallagher, an actor who broke out in Alan Parker's The Commitments and Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, and really hasn't stopped working ever since, appearing in dozens of films and TV projects over the past 3 decades. She's in Last Chance Harvey and Albert Nobbs, she's in The Field of Blood and Belgravia, she's in You, Me, and the Apocalypse and The Personal History of David Copperfield, which screened at TIFF in 2019, along with Shelly Love's A Bump Along the Way, which stars Bronagh as Pamela, a chaotic single mom who finds herself pregnant in her 40s, much to the horror of her teenage daughter, played by Lola Pettigrew. Delayed by the pandemic, but finally released here in the spring of 2021, which is when we recorded this episode, it's one of those oddball little delights built on a clever script and a couple of great performances. You should check it out. Bronagh picked Kusama Infinity, Heather Lenz's 2018 documentary about the life and work of the artist Yayoi Kusama, an avant-garde painter and sculptor who made a considerable impact in New York in the 60s, went home to Japan in the 70s for her health, and eventually reclaimed her standing as a pop art visionary. She's now regarded as a cultural influence on the scale of Andy Warhol. Watch this documentary, and you'll be amazed it took everyone so long to figure that out. This is Someone Else's Movie.
Well, I just felt it was so empowering to finally see an artist captured in such a brilliant documentary, retrospective sort of documentary, really, about her life, to see someone that had, utterly lived the life of an artist. And, we all love, I'm sure, our artists, and we know that a lot of the time mental health can be synonymous with it, and struggle and poverty. But I just feel she was such an extraordinary person, and her gift was there from such a tiny child, and the gift was so enormous and so potent in the molecular structure that she was, that it transcended all boundaries, all hardship. It's transcended all trauma. And the gift, whatever she was, if she was a conduit of, or to me, she just felt like a star particle of some sort, that she was just connected to what was out there. Regardless of what trauma, this gift and this light and this energy just kept coming and kept coming. And I just feel she overcame all of the grief and the abuse and trauma that she had as a child. She never once went down the road of victim. I just think the isolation that she must have felt in her life, the rejection, the struggle, all the poverty, I just thought her inner strength that almost, she almost took her own life out of frustration. I just thought it was one of the most admirable journeys of life and survival and, courage that I'd ever seen. And I just thought anybody that's ever, I didn't get this and he messed me around, or I took this deal or that deal, or they signed this deal. I just thought there is a life lived. And she went back to, her little village in Japan, and she said, yeah, I finally brought back the crown. And, and now they bring the children to her exhibitions, and they inspire children all over the world. And I just thought, she didn't take her own life, although she did jump out of a window. Mm-hmm. She just kept going. And I just thought, if ever you're feeling sorry for yourself, if ever you're feeling, she lives in a psychiatric hospital. I just thought it was just the most, humbling film I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's the challenge with making a documentary about an artist is that you have to get the art in there as well, but the life is so much more important, and where it comes from and how it's created. And the thing that dazzles me about Kusama is that she, as you say, she can only be herself. Like there's no pretense, and watching her not adapt to the times and just drive them instead over the course of her life, the way that the documentary organizes it, that was something I wasn't prepared for when I watched it, because her stuff, if you look at it, it's all polka dots. You could collapse it into a single line, right? This is when she did the big paintings. This is when she did the sculptures. This is when she came back to the rooms. but then to see what was going on in her life, and you factor in, like the naked happenings in New York and the protests against the war.
Unbelievable, revolutionary, an art revolutionary. And, one of the most prolific artists there has to be, I know Picasso has forever and ever the amount of sculpture and drawings, everything. All of the great, iconic artists. But for her to not just be involved in all of the anti-war stuff, all what we know, Yoko and John, God of Mercy, and all the New York movement, she was celebrating, the uniqueness of the human body and why should be put such fodder out there, obviously, for Vietnam and what was going on at the time, and it really is a deeply spiritual, wisdom that she had. Why should we murder this beautiful? This is all we have, and that to me was just, such a badass, she just trailblazed through everybody. And so much, theft on her originality, and plagiarism from all the greats that are, known as obviously, Andy Warhol and all the great New York artists. But, she was way ahead of the posse, and obviously if she maybe, had been more stable as a person, maybe she would have had, she did it her way. So this is not a criticism, maybe she would have been able to enjoy her success a lot earlier, but, she didn't play the game. She just kept going, because the most important thing, and that is the most important thing for any artist, is the work.
Yeah. And the work is it's powerful, it's distinctive, and it's so complex. The film almost can't do justice to it. The mirrored rooms and the sense of engagement with the artist, the way that she guides you while you're looking at her own work. They actually discussed this at length.
Part of the work, it was like a moving human sculpture in it. She was creating, for me looking at it, she was creating heaven on earth. She was trying to, more than any other artist, and I don't have a great knowledge of all art, or that movement at the time in New York, but, she certainly was, from a place of the great classics. She understood spirituality very deeply. She had an understanding of what, the gods were being painted at the time, the Michelangelos, all the great artists, the Italian movement. She knew what it was to paint heaven on earth, and she did it in such a unique style. She just was, I don't know of any other artist that just created such a, unique streak of her own artery of art,
Yeah. There's the Impressionists is the only other thing I can think of, where you can see the before and after, where there was a movement that actually changed the direction of art.
Yeah. And I think her, the gravitas of the work that she's done, we're only getting to really bring it into mainstream, conversations now about art. Have you seen her? And people say, oh, I know her. So I think she's actually the wave of her talent that kept coming forward and kept going forward. I just think now she's just going to change stuff on a massive level. Because the Tate Modern are going to have a massive retrospective from now till next March. You're taking over the entire, the entire massive gallery. It's enormous. So, and then my other friends in Berlin, because I was texting friends last night saying, have you seen this documentary? Another wonderful artist friend of mine, Nina Hines. And she was like, no, but I used to go to wherever other gallery it was, and she just sit in the room and just absorb it. No, but profound. Yeah.
Have you had the chance to see her stuff in person? I've never had the pleasure.
I never have, no, but Mum and I are going to go when the gates of the world open up. We're going to go to the Tate. We love the Tate in London, because my mum's an artist. She makes, with cloth, she makes patchwork quilts and all sorts of creative things. So she's obsessed with her. My mum's like, obsessed. She's her biggest fan.
I had no idea. My wife is a knitwear designer and author, and she was just lit up when she saw the designs.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Polka dots and stripes, that's her thing.
Yeah.
And there is, so I guess in that case, the next logical question is, when did you first see the documentary? It's a fairly recent film, but you've clearly been aware of her before this.
When it came out, and then whenever my mum came down to visit me, we watched it down here again, because I think you've got a projector there. I've got a projector as well, so I can watch it on my back wall of my living room here. So we watched it again. And I was thinking about the film and I didn't know. And then I said to my mum, what would you like to do? And she goes, oh, can we watch the movie? And I was like, yeah, then that's the movie I'm going to choose. So that's then I just thought, well, no better one than this. So, because obviously there's all the classics. I mean, I love, so many movies, and there's so many great movies in the last few years, and there's all the great, Scorsese and the Coppolas, and I love war movies, and, I love Irish films and old Hollywood movies. So I've been watching a fair amount of old 50s American movies and Betty Davis and, Sunset Boulevard and all that. So, but I just thought that might be a breath of fresh air. And obviously in this conversation, hopefully people will go and look at it,
Yeah, it's one of those things. We actually had a Kusama show in Toronto at the Art Gallery, I want to say,
all right, great.
3 years ago, maybe right around the same time the documentary came out, and I couldn't get to it. My editor went and loved it, and I did not get the chance, and it just kills me that I missed the chance to see it in person. I'm hoping to get back to London soon, but who knows when.
Come to the Tate Day. Come to the Tate and see it day.
Yeah. Oh, I will. If I have any chance at all to get there. It's also so jarring to watch some films in lockdown that show you places that intimately, like New York, that I haven't been to New York in a year and a half, and I love the sense of just wandering around MoMA and seeing and stumbling into things. Actually, I must have seen her chair there. I'm sure I have, but the sense of it now, I guess it doubly feels like something out of another time. Watching footage of her arriving in 1958 in Manhattan, and I'm going to galleries and having happenings. That world is doubly gone, right? Because the New York that we're going to come back to after lockdown ends is going to be different again. But we're dealing with someone who was so far ahead of her time that only now we're starting to catch up to it. So it's like New York is now ready for her again.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be another chapter. I suppose my first experiences in New York were like the early 90s. So it was still pretty grungy rock and roll. It's extremely manicured and, very, very, gentrified, and a lot of that old CBGB's world that we loved is just gone, and the artists, friends living in massive lofts in Chelsea, that's all gone. And the rock and roll world, I had a great friends that ran Sinead Cafe, and Jeff Buckley, God of Mercy, was a great friend of ours. And, so we were all part of that whole scene, but it's very different now, and it's obviously so expensive. Yeah. But, I just think it'll definitely, after something like this, trauma that everybody's been through in the last, 14, 15 months, there hopefully will be another, surge of art, and, people will need that expression. They'll need that outlet now. So hopefully we'll see some interesting, scenes pop up in New York that aren't just about the very rich. And I just think, she was a huge part of that movement, but obviously obviously she was ambitious, and the other people that are interviewed obviously say that with great fondness towards you as well, because she had to, because she obviously knew, she needed a sponsor, and she was poor, but, it shows you in those days, that's kind of the way it worked as well. You need to find rich people who sponsor your art. And that, the curators of those wonderful galleries at that time, they supported that, nowadays, I think it's much more about the massive agents and the massive money exchange. And, but it was a really beautiful synopsis of New York at that time. Yeah. Yeah. And the freedom and just the craziness and the innocence and the utter bacchanalia of it all, so it's great.
Yeah. I didn't realize.
Hedonism.
Yes. I was going to say, I didn't realize she'd spent a decade and a half there, and it was the decade and a half where everything actually went completely wild, because they were coming out of the post-war 50s sort of gray flannel suits to suddenly running around naked in Central Park and in front of halls of justice to make their points. And then to also be part of the pop art explosion and to, as you say, to be taken advantage of, and to have her stuff just replicated by people who were because they were white and male, obviously in a better position to sell their stuff. There's that moment where I think it's a photograph of the Guggenheim where she shows up in a kimono at an art opening. And it's the first time, according to the film, that she used her otherness, her perceived exoticness, her ethnicity as a way to get noticed rather than just showing up as one of the artists to make herself an exhibit to stand out.
Oh, she was so clever. She just knew, I think it's going to take me a long time to sort of be able to articulate it properly, but I just think she just knew about energy and the distribution of energy, and she was very much tapped into something that I don't think many people are, and she knew what to attract, she knew what to put out there, what buttons to press and what energy to put out in order to attract the right thing, She just operated from a different way, she didn't see life the way I think, what we term as normal people do, and be that her upbringing or traumatic experience as a child, but she knew what she needed at that time. I mean, she was a piece of art, she was that, so, and she obviously had, huge love and pride for her incredible culture, as well. An incredible culture of design. I mean, if you've spent any time in Japan, have you been to Japan?
No, I've never been able to go.
I mean, it's just insane. The design is everything. And about, even just how you sit down and eat, even just how you actually sleep on a bed, it's all about the design and the aesthetic and, the materials that are used, and it's just all about design. It's extraordinary. When you see those outfits and just the children, even how they were dressed and the wee yukatas and stuff. I worked there twice, and honest to God, it was just one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life, really incredible. Yeah. It's amazing. No, she's wonderful. I'm just so glad she's still alive to see and feel it, Norm, and feel the love finally, and I think that's all people can ask for as an artist, because it's so heartbreaking when people die young or they don't get the chance to, see really how much they're loved, and that can hopefully heal them in some way,
Yeah, I wondered about that too. The film doesn't really get into the public reception. It shows people in line at the very end, this surge, because her stuff is like, it's geared to influencers. It's the perfect background for people who just want to share images of themselves. But there's a genuine fascination with the work. It's not just that they're standing next to it, they're in it, they're part of it. And so the film ends with these shots of 5-hour lines outside of little galleries where her stuff is showing, and people who are all 25 and younger, because they're the only ones who can stand outside in the cold, just excited for her work. And this new surge. The money is great, I'm sure. The what is it, one painting sold for $75 is now sold for $750,000.
Right.
But it's the value of the art, not the monetary thing. Like, people finally acknowledge that, or not people, but the world is acknowledging this stuff.
That she's the greatest female artist of the 20th century.
Yeah, if you just go on money, but I don't think it's about money. I think you can actually.
Oh no, it's not about money. No, I think it's about, I love the image that she has of the net and just throwing the net. She just kept doing it wider and wider, and almost as if until she touched everybody, it was just that strength. I mean, where does that come from other than a spiritual place?
Yeah, I wonder too.
And people need that art. People need, in times of any trouble or anything, that's why people flock to theaters and concerts and galleries when times are tough. We need it. We need to know that somebody else has that other way of seeing things that'll bring us out of the darkness, And I think that's what she was doing. It's just incredible. And the bottom line, I think, is it's such uplifting work. It's so happy.
Yeah. No, you can't help but smile when you see it. There's nothing. Even the soft sculptures, which they can be off-putting, I think, depending on where the camera is, because the shapes look alive and creepy and phallic sometimes in a way that is discomforting, in a way that her other work just isn't. But pulled back, and if you see them on a surface, if you see the chair that's just this big weird puffball, it's just charming. And I don't mean that to belittle the work. I don't think that because something is pleasant to look at, it's necessarily less than, Francis Bacon's suffering. But there's that moment where she's compared in the film to Pollock, to Jackson Pollock. And they're both working they're working on the similar wavelength, but their work is so completely different. Pollock's is violent and scattered and thrashed, and hers is so orderly and calming in a way that I think I respond to her better. It's certainly more, like soothing.
It's soothing and it's very feminine, and it's also, I think there's something salvaged from her childhood that was so pure. I think whatever developmental issues that she had, and obviously I don't know the woman at all, but the traumas that she had as a child, there was a part of her that I feel she almost stayed protected in a little bubble from the traumas, because they obviously don't go into the details, and rightly so. In the field, the flower field, the poppy field she had, there was a trauma. So you just gotta think, well, what happened to the child?
It's very circumspect about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you just know that whatever safe place that she went to as a child, if her mother was so destructive and violent and obviously, destroyed her beautiful paintings as a child, she managed to hang on to that little place. So that's why I think there's an element of child to all of them, and her fascination as a child was so much stronger than her capability to self-destruct. Her love and her fascination of nature and symmetry and natural symmetry and the natural universal rhythm of the universe, the fact that she was able to tap into that and was connected in that way as a special conduit gifted person, kind of otherworldly, without sounding, silly or naive saying that, but certainly from a different, more evolved way of seeing things and absorbing and then reiterating and recreating in a unique format.
Yeah, I was finding myself wondering too if the biases of the art critics at the time helped her in a weird way, just because she knew what she wanted to do so clearly that she didn't change tactics because of in response to any of their rejections. She just kept doing her thing and doubled down and tripled down and refined herself in a way towards the thing she wanted to do.
Because I think, the primal denial that she was experienced as a child from her mom, if your parents are supportive and you give your children confidence, that's such a gift. That's all people want. To know that they didn't destroy their child's confidence, that they weren't abusive to the point of destruction and addiction issues and stuff like that. So I think the fact that she was able to move from that, I'm not saying get over it, because how do you get over that? But she was able to still move from a place of trauma and still create. So that shows you again the force of her talent, the pressure she must have been under as a person to create. And the extraordinary thing that she never did sketches or, dress rehearsed a piece. She just came out with it, boom.
Yeah.
It was coming through this live line, under her. She never ever did drafts. She never, did blueprints or, tulls, whatever the name is, the sketches beforehand. It was an utter outlet of whatever was coming in was coming out.
Yeah, it is remarkable to watch her just in that first 2 minutes sitting at a table and start to do the things she does, right? And it just, by the end of the film, it's covered.
Yeah.
She's created her entire world around her.
Yeah, yeah. Just extraordinary, whatever, just a light being, a star. That's what when I was just watching it, I was going, she's like a star particle. She's just collecting all this stuff, just bringing it out. She's a profound person. I'm so glad that she's got to see this success. She must have knew all along,
Well, I was going to say, I think she kept everything, right? There are all these pieces of her history that show up in the film that have clearly been preserved. And the films that she made, I mean, she was a multimedia artist before that was even a thing.
Big time.
Yeah.
She was extraordinary. I mean, she was what any of those artists at that time wanted to do. she did it solo.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was the movement.
She was. And because she wasn't a conventional artist, I think that made people underestimate her in a way that let her become stronger. Right? Like you can see the tension in the coverage of the 60s happenings about how people remember them as purer and more loving. And then you see footage of the police daring her to do something so that they can arrest her, and just all these weird tensions that have melted away in history. Like people just don't think of that stuff as being as brutal and violent and potentially dangerous as it was. But she went right in. I mean, she also showed up at the Biennale in Venice just to be an artist rather than to be invited. It was
extraordinary. Lying in the field with her silver balls, selling them for $2. Just genius, because she knew how pretentious it all was as well. She's like, why can't I sell my art? It's just genius. She's just such a punk rocker.
Yeah. Now that you mention it, she was punk 20 years too soon.
Oh, punk 20 years, way before them. Just like get out of town,
Yeah.
What a woman, what a woman. Just so funny, all the quirky relationships and all the funny people that she met. Amazing. I mean, what a strength, what a character. Yeah, it's great that there is so much footage, that there are so many. Yeah, it's great, isn't it, that there's so much of that time. And I love when the scene, was it the Guggenheim or the Bronagh Gallery, where the lady who came in, who was the potential curator for something, and her mother, and then so we should leave now because people are going to get naked. Oh yes, that was a theater, right, on 52nd. I think, 56th Street. You can't leave now because people are going to get undressed. And she was like, oh no, we must have got my mother. And the mother was like, no, let's stay. She connected with people. Yeah. Unexpected people. Yeah, big time. Yeah, I'd love to be able to see those films. I wonder if they're going to be part of the tape package. They probably aren't. They never are. I'll check it out. I must see. I'm sure you can go online and see the sort of content of it. Yeah. But she's just amazing. My God, I can't wait to go. Actually, no, we'll definitely go and see it now. Definitely, 100%. With any luck, I will bump into you there. But before we run out of time, I did want to ask it. The podcast always ends with this question, which is kind of awkward with documentaries, which is there anything of this film that you have used or in your own work, or anything that you've allowed to influence you? Is there a Kusama principle that you use in your own life or in your own performance? Fearless. Yeah. I'm going to just take a dot off her universe. I'm going to steal a tiny little dot and just have it as my dot of fearlessness, because that's what she was. So I'm just going to touch one of them. I'm not going to take it. It's not mine to take. I'm just going to touch a dot of her fearlessness and just be fearless, because we only have one life and it's precious. And it ain't a dress rehearsal, clearly. So I'm just going to be fearless from now on. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Isn't that what they say? I think so, yeah. And certainly after a year and a half of this, we're going to have a lot of pent-up energy. I know. But I mean, I've actually enjoyed it in a lot of ways. And I've had tough moments as well, but I've actually embraced it sort of. And, I've been creative and I've been productive. So that's been good. So, but clearly, we are looking forward to getting out and about again. My thanks to Bronagh Gallagher, who you can see right now in A Bump Along the Way, streaming free on Hoopla and available on demand pretty much everywhere. You should also check out The Personal History of David Copperfield. It's really good. Thanks also to Ali Lemaire Shedden. She knows what she did. You can find Bronagh on Twitter at Bronagall, BRONAGHGALL, and you can find Kusama Infinity on DVD from Magnolia Home Entertainment. It's also streaming on Canopy and available on VOD platforms all over. If you're in Ontario, you can even watch it at the TVO website, tvo.org/documentaries. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com, where I host the Now What podcast every Friday, in addition to writing far too many words about movies and television. And you can find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, SEMcast, and pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been enjoying us. Every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're there. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get your booster when you can, and Happy New Year. I'll see you next time.